Good morning. It is 6:40 a.m. on Friday, March 30th, 2018. I'm Christiana Ellis and I just got up. This is 5 more minutes. Yesterday I went to see the A Wrinkle in Time movie, which I'd been wanting to see and just hadn't, what with all sorts of things happening, hadn't made it out yet. But I went to see it, and my sort of immediate impression coming out of it was that in a theme kind of alongside the theme of the movie itself, um, what I actually tweeted was like its protagonist, A Wrinkle in Time is not without its faults, but it is still deserving of love. And to kind of elaborate on that a little bit, I think it's not a perfect movie, although it has occurred to me recently that although we often have an impulse to describe movies that way, since when is there really an expectation that every movie has to be perfect in order to enjoy it? I mean, that's kind of an unreasonable expectation, right? But suffice it to say, what I mean by that is that there were parts of it that I think were a little slow. I think that was overall, like, if I were to have a complaint about the movie, it's really, I think, only that there are a few places that the pacing seems to lack urgency a little bit. Um, and and then there's one or two places that feel a little bit like this is not necessarily the most interesting way that they could have done this piece. Like there's a particular visualization of something that admittedly I'm not sure how I would have done it differently necessarily, but there's a bit near the end where just uh, I don't know, I don't want to spoil anything, but there's, I guess, just a depiction of something that's supposed to be scary, but because it's a kid, I guess they kind of pull the punch because they want it to be scary, but maybe not that scary, and it ends up just kind of being a little bit weird, and not clear what's happening exactly. But with those, minor um, complaints, I don't know, uh, to said, I love the story, of course. A Wrinkle in Time is a classic. In fact, actually, just let me one moment. Went to go get, this is my copy of my yellowing copy of A Wrinkle in Time from way back in the day. Um, uh, and actually, you know what? Now that I think about it, I don't think this was like not the first copy that I ever read. I think this was bought at a used bookstore at some point. But the point is, I have an old copy on my shelf because it's a book that's meaningful to me. And so the themes, though, in that book of Meg, with all her faults, coming to love herself um, and believe in herself, um, that's a really powerful message, and I think the movie conveys it well. And I really enjoyed that aspect of it. Um, the kids are all cast extremely well, and I can especially single out both. I mean, like all three of the kids are really good. I keep wanting to say, well, especially X, except that like they're all good. So I don't really have any uh, uh, singling them out. So they're all good is the point. But one of the things I guess that was the most perhaps unexpected is just that the kid who plays Charles Wallace, who's the youngest, um, that's a particularly demanding role for a little kid, because on the one hand, the story, not to get too spoilery, the story requires that actor to be able to play this kid both as incredibly precocious and super smart, but also extremely compassionate and loving and caring. But then also to have that same actor be able to play the role as cold and mean and sarcastic, which, I mean, that's a lot to ask for a kid who's maybe, like 8 or something like that. I don't know how old the actor actually is, but the kid is supposed to be like, 5 or 6, I think. I'm trying to remember exactly how old the Charles Wallace as the character is supposed to be. But it's in that range. But in any event, they cast him well, and the actor did a good job. It's because, I mean, there's that role has a lot of heavy lifting to do in that story, even though Meg is the main character. But yes, and the girl who played Meg, Storm Reed, I think is actually her name. Um, uh, which I'm mostly just amused by, because Reed, even though it's spelled Reid, it just makes me think of Fantastic Four. But in any event, she's really good too, and I loved just the visuals and the imagination of how everything looked, and the depiction of the Mrs. Whatsit, Mrs. Who, and Mrs. Which, and just there's a lot of powerful emotion in a lot of scenes. And so even though I think the movie has, pacing issues, and there's a few bits where I think that probably in an effort to not be too scary for kids, there's some sequences that maybe lost a little bit more of the tension than, like they could have been more impactful, and I feel like that there was a little bit of a, you sense that lack of commitment, like this is the less scary version, and it's sort of an overcorrection, that sort of thing. That's so there's a few sequences like that, and the movie does have periods where it just feels like, okay, get on with it. We're spending a lot of time without anything really changing in this sequence. But at the same time, the things that I like about it definitely more than make up for the things that are less perfect. And especially since that's the theme of the story, um, that's I think meaningful to think about in this context. Um, you know, it's and so I really liked it. I think it's worth seeing. So I'll go ahead and leave it there for today, and I will talk to you tomorrow for 5 more minutes.